The adventurers have been traveling through the hot, sticky jungle for weeks looking for the lost temple. Suddenly, a band of lizard folk jump from the bushes and attack the party. The wizard takes aim with her mighty spell. The archer takes aim at the beast that blocks their way. Hello and welcome to another Stellarian Games video. In this episode, we're going to be making jungle terrain. I've been wanting to make jungle terrain for quite a while. I've been buying plants at hobby stores, saving it up, and I finally found the inspiration to do it. So in this video, we'll be walking through the steps on how to make this. To start this build, we're using 1/8 inch MDF and cutting out a bunch of bases for the jungle terrain. We're sanding the edges to bevel them. And then we're cutting styrofoam into chunks for the rock outcroppings for different pieces of the jungle terrain. They're going to be stacked styrofoam, and we'll be texturing them in the next step. Now that we have them all cut out, we are putting some wood glue and screwing the pieces together, and we'll let that dry overnight. Now we start the actual texturing process, just kind of shaving the XPS down a little bit, and then using the knife to score it and tear chunks out of the styrofoam. I use a wood file to tear out extra chunks of this, and if you're going to do this, please wear a mask to protect yourself from the styrofoam dust. Using a knife and just kind of cutting in angles and then cutting into those to create striations in the rock. Again, tearing out as much of the styrofoam as I can to give it a nice texture. Once it's all textured, I'm using a heat gun to just tone down some of the sharp edges of the styrofoam. It rounds off the edges just by kind of hitting with a couple blasts from the heat gun. It also accentuates some of those points just by melting it in a little bit. The next step, we're using a variety of different sizes of drinking straws. I had measured these for the different plant options that I had available to me, and so I'm going to glue a whole bunch of these drinking straws onto the MDF. These are going to be essentially the trunks of the trees and bushes of this jungle, and I'm using the hot glue gun to make root systems that come out from these trunks. Instead of gluing the plants on directly and having to deal with that, I'm using the straws as kind of placeholders where they'll be eventually attached. That way we can do all of the ground undercovering and texturing without having all of the plants in place, and then the plants will be the final step. I'm using the nozzle of the hot glue gun to texture the roots and giving it a really nice rough look to it. Then I'm applying just white glue, brushing it over the entire thing and giving it a coat of sand. Pushing it on just to make sure that it's set in, and then knock the extra sand off. For the ones that have the rock outcroppings, just go around those outcropping areas and add the sand, same as the last step. We'll paint the styrofoam and the base separately. The styrofoam, I'm using a Mod Podge and black paint method, covering all of the styrofoam. And the MDF, I just give it a black spray paint. Once all of that is dry, we're just hot gluing those styrofoam pieces into place as the rock outcroppings. Now we're giving a brown dry brush. This is just brown house paint. And we're going to give all of them the same brown undercoat. Then we're using a lighter tan color to to do another dry brush, giving it a little bit richer brown color. Now just hitting a few highlights with a light gray in kind of a patchy pattern, and then the rock outcroppings get a much heavier dry brush. The exposed tree trunks, I'm just tipping with a little bit of green to help transition the green plants into the trunks. This is all of the bases with just the sand and paint texture. Now we're coming in and giving the first undercoat with white glue, and I'm using catkins from a birch tree crushed up. They end up looking like dead vegetation, dead leaves. So I wanted that to be the first coat, and then the foliage kind of glued on top of that. The first green section is just a green flocking, just white glue and brushed into kind of patchy areas. Pour the green flocking over it, kind of push it into place in the glue, and then knock the excess off. You could leave it at this stage if you wanted to, but I wanted to add a little bit more depth of undergrowth. I'm using tacky glue now because the next undergrowth is a little bit more clumpy and the white PVA glue isn't as suitable a glue. So I'm taking the clump foliage and kind of pressing it into place to give it a little bit more texture over the piece, simulating kind of that undergrowth of plants. You could do a lot more undergrowth than just this clump foliage. I decided to leave it at this stage simply because I didn't want to spend that much more time, and I thought it would look suitable the way that it was. The clump foliage just adds an extra layer of texture to all of these pieces. Now it's time to start looking at the plants. This is the collection of plants that I had been collecting over the last several years. And the first step is going to be cutting out the different chunks of the plants, getting ready to put it into the different base. I'm just dry fitting all of the plants into place right now just to see how they would fit. Then I'm hot gluing the smaller plants into place because they tended to fall out. I left the larger plants loose, thinking that it might be easier to pull those out and position miniatures if you wanted to, or replace them or change them around in the future as well. And as you can see, the larger plants hold in place even without the glue. Well, I hope you enjoyed this jungle terrain tutorial. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, and leave some comments if you have any questions or would like to see videos in the future. Thank you.